Folks, we're facing an emergency in Canada's energy industry. Yesterday, Alberta oil was selling for $10 US, the lowest level in our history. Companies are underwater, burning through cash, unable to raise equity. We're already hearing confirmation of hundreds of layoffs starting in the service sector. And oil and gas CEOs have told me that if we do not have an immediate solution to this price crisis, that there will be thousands of layoffs in the months ahead. I don't say this to spook people, but so we understand the stakes of what we are facing right now. Now, some folks out there have been critical of my call this week for the government to bring in an emergency measure to reduce by 10% the production of oil in Alberta. And some people are saying, well, this is not a free market thing, it's government intervention, we shouldn't do it. So please just give me a moment to explain why this is so important. Alberta produces about 4 million barrels of oil per day on average. We ship out, we have the capacity to take away about 3 million barrels through pipelines and rail. We send about 600,000 barrels to our refineries here in Alberta that we consume domestically and through other parts of Canada. That leaves an excess of about 400,000 barrels per day that we cannot ship because there's no more space on the pipelines and there's no more rail cars available, and that we do not, and our refineries are operating at near full capacity, so there's nothing more to put through the refineries. So all that excess oil production has been stockpiled in storage tankers for months now, and now we've hit the total maximum of storage available. There's 35 million barrels of Alberta oil in storage tankers around the province. So we've been producing 4 million, 600,000 is used here, 3 million is shipped, 400,000 a day excess being put in storage. There's nowhere for the oil to go, and that's why the price has been dropping day by day in the past couple of weeks. Most of the past couple of years, we've been facing a price differential between Alberta and Texas oil of $20, $15 to $20, which is a problem for sure. But now it's become $40 to $45. Like, companies are literally paying shippers to take oil off their hands. They do not have an infinite amount of cash. They are burning through this cash, which is why most of our oil companies are right now developing their capital spending plans for the beginning of next year, which includes the winter drilling season. And a lot of these companies tell me that they are putting a zero in their capital spending plans. Many of them they will not be hiring drilling companies to do drilling in the winter. And then those drilling companies will not be hiring local contractors all across Alberta. So this could become a tsunami of layoffs if we do not act now. If we can get the price back up, look, there's a long-term challenge that we always talk about. The pipelines, we need to continue to fight for that long-term solution. And part of that may be some more rail cars, but obviously it's Keystone and or Trans Mountain. But we can't wait 2 years for a pipeline, let alone a year for more rail cars. We need to act right now by bringing the production in line with the market, with how much can be taken out of Alberta or consumed here. Now, I'm a free market conservative. I prefer that you don't have to use government intervention, but we called on the oil industry to voluntarily reduce production. And let me give a thumbs up to those companies that did so. About 10 or so companies reduced production by about 200,000 barrels per day. But that does not affect this market problem. Here's the problem. The price for all 4 million barrels that we produce is basically being affected by those 400,000 distressed barrels. If we can take those excess distressed barrels out of production, what will happen is that the financial markets will immediately reflect that. They will immediately correct. The price will immediately go up. And if we were to maintain a cap on production of about 3.6 million barrels per day, within 2 months, we would see those inventories in storage bleeding off, being shipped, consumed, and we would go from about 35 million to about 17 million barrels in storage, okay? And then the price would be in equilibrium. Our price differential would go from $40 to it's estimated about $20. This means companies would actually have positive cash flow. They'd be maybe making modest profits, but at least they could afford to put some money into capital spending, including drilling. And that means jobs in the service sector all across Alberta. So folks, please understand, I would not normally be calling for intervention, but I do not see an option right now. The NDP is talking about rail cars a year from now. You know, by the end of next year, we're hoping that Line 3 will be operational and new rail cars that companies have contracted for privately without government subsidies will add about 600,000 barrels per day of takeaway capacity. And then we can be producing 4 million barrels without a big problem and getting an okay price for it. But right now, we are facing a crisis. I'm trying to get this point across to people. This is not normal times. Just let the market decide. What are we talking about? Tens of thousands of layoffs? And by the way, let me talk about the market. One of the players in the market is the people of Alberta who own the oil, who own it. And right now it's being given away with zero royalties paid on it. We cannot, I believe it's basically immoral for the government to allow this aberration in the market to destroy the value of the asset that belongs to the people of Alberta. And by the way, when these oil companies go into a lease agreement with Alberta to extract the energy, they understand that the government, the Crown, has not just a right under the Energy and Mines Act, but a responsibility to protect the value of the asset. And that power to control production has always existed in Alberta. It was used by the Social Credit Government in 1947 to limit production, because back when they hit a gusher in Leduc and then exploration started suddenly, there were very few pipelines in Alberta. So they had to maintain some coordination between production levels and shipment levels. That was the case in Alberta for most of the history of our energy industry. Peter Lougheed used this tool to respond to the crisis of the National Energy Program. So don't tell me that Ernst Manning and Peter Lougheed were anti-market socialists because they, when necessary, used tools to avoid giving away our energy. They had a responsibility to do so. So does the government today. So folks, I hope you'll look more into this. We need to call for immediate action if we are to prevent potentially thousands or tens of thousands of layoffs. Another effect of this crisis, if it continues to unfold, not only will it cost our provincial budget like upwards of $7 billion in foregone revenues, not only will it result in potentially tens of thousands of layoffs, but a huge number of bankruptcies. A lot of service companies, small town Alberta, and in the cities are barely hanging on. A lot have already gone under in the last 3 years, so a whole lot more would go under. And a lot of our mid-size and even potentially a couple of larger oil companies would not be able to survive the year at $10 or $12 oil, given their current financial situation. So how is it if you're a free market person, tell me this, how does it benefit the market if we end up with this massive consolidation and basically just 2 or 3 major players dominating the energy industry in Alberta? So folks, in defense of the public interest, the asset that belongs to Albertans, it's our property, and we have a right to protect the value of that property, not to give it away, and we have an obligation as government to step in and prevent potentially tens of thousands of layoffs that would have a devastating human impact on families, and to prevent potentially significant bankruptcies that would reduce competition and undermine the potential future market dynamics in the energy sector. So that's why I'm calling on the government immediately to bring in limits on production until we can reset the price and get the market back in balance and save Alberta jobs.